My name is Tennyson Stead, and this is the Eight-Sided Blog. And today we're going to be talking about the fundamentals of screenwriting. I have worked as an independent film executive. I've worked as a script consultant, and I've been doing coverage for probably 15 years. I've read hundreds or thousands of screenplays, and you know, the notes that I give almost always revolve around the same basic fundamentals. And it's because most writers, when they come into this industry, don't have a background in dramaturgy and they don't have a background in acting. Most writers come into this business from either literature or from journalism or with those writing habits because, you know, they were taught that in English class. The problem is that those scripts are missing the core of what makes cinema good. And I know that sounds harsh, but it's the stark reality of the problem, and it's why easily 98% of the scripts that I get passed on. It oftentimes has nothing to do with the quality of the prose, and a lot of these writers are really good writers. But they haven't written good films. And we're going to talk about why that is and how it works. So what makes good literature, okay, is having observations about people and the world they live in and connecting those observations with themes. Writers typically are creatures of theme, right? And we create conflict on the page in literature by juxtaposing themes against each other, good versus evil, right? And just the coexistence of those two things on the page creates tension in the mind of the reader, and that gives a sense of depth to the experience of reading that material. That is not what creates conflict in between actors. It just isn't. On screen or on stage, that same approach to storytelling reads as passive, okay? A lot of people think of cinema as, you know, literature but visual, and it's not, right? Visual media is painting. Visual media is photography. Those are things you look at. Cinema is something you watch. And when people say that cinema is a language of action, it's because we need to give the audience something to watch, okay? The fact that they're sitting down and watching in the first place means they don't want our observations. They want to make their own observations in the most fundamental, literal sense. So we can't approach this from a place of theme. On stage or on screen, a story is made up of the efforts a character makes to accomplish a mission. And for that mission to feel compelling, it needs to be urgent to the character in question, it needs to be personal to them, and it needs to be overwhelmingly challenging. A character's arc is not something that happens to them. It's not the ways in which their experiences sort of mold and shape them into a new person. That's novelist thinking, okay? A character's arc is the way they change themselves from the person who is doomed to failure in the thing that they're trying to do into the person who can actually succeed. Because if when the story began, if they were the person who could succeed, why make a movie about it? Right? Why make a movie about the tax accountant who just does the books? Why make a movie about the firefighter who's really good at his job, who just puts out the fire? No, either the job has to be so big that no one could do it, or it has to be at least big enough that this particular person with the skills that they have couldn't possibly achieve it. And then they decide to achieve it anyway, and they go and they turn themselves through their efforts to accomplish this thing into the person who can actually do it. And that is a cinematic arc. We create conflict on screen by pitting these actions against each other, okay? If you have a detective who's trying to catch a murderer, and if you have a murderer who's trying to get away with a crime for whatever reason, money, whatever, right? They're trying to make money. Then everything that detective does to accomplish their mission is going to make life harder for the murderer. If the detective finds a clue, then the murderer's efforts to get away with this crime and make their money are thwarted, right? If the murderer hides the clues, then the detective has to work harder to find them. Every single thing one of these characters does influences the work of the other character to accomplish their own mission. So inevitably, you know, they have to work around each other to get to where they want to go. That is what actors do. You put one actor in a scene going in one direction, you put one actor in a scene going in another, and they don't have to want the same thing, right? They just have to have goals that bring them into conflict and force them to reckon with each other in some profound way. They have to go through each other to get to what they want. And as long as that's the case, you're going to have a good scene, because every single scene breaks down into a microcosm of that larger story. You can have intimacy in this model very easily by giving an actor the need to accomplish something on an intimate scale. If an actor has, one of the things that writers sort of assume is that this action-based writing dissolves tone and it dissolves character, and it doesn't, okay? What an actor is doing and how they are doing it is what tells us who they are. So one actor may require emotional support in order to accomplish their mission, and they go into a scene trying to get that emotional support from somebody who wants something completely different. And how they try to get that emotional support from that other character is going to tell us what their relationship with them is. If you're trying to get emotional support from your dad, and your dad's trying to finish building a car, right? It's a different thing. And maybe your dad's trying to get you to help with the car, and maybe you're trying to get your dad to listen. You can have an intimate scene that way. Or if it's a spouse or a loved one, it's going to be a different exchange. Your relationship with that person can even be something you leverage as an actor to try and get what you want. Hey, Dad, you know, you're supposed to listen to me. You're my father. You can, backstories and all this stuff, anything that's important to the story comes out over the course of the action of the story. Going back to the murderer and the detective, right? The detective is going to find out, or they're not, but their job is to find out how the murderer did the murder and who they are and what's going on. So you don't need to show the murderer at the beginning of the movie. You don't need this exposition, because the detective is going to go get that information in front of the audience. They're going to do it. The audience is going to find out that stuff because the detective has to find it out, or at least, you know, maybe the detective doesn't find it out, in which case does the audience really need to know? You see what I'm saying? The information that's necessary to the story, whether it's emotional information, plot information, backstory, or whatever the case may be, naturally comes out from the action of the story. There's nothing outside the action of the story, screenwriters. So, why is this so important? I will tell you. There's basically two ways that a character can reveal themselves on screen. Either through the action of the story in the way that we're discussing, which is what we call active writing, or by presenting their qualities to the audience. A lot of writers will write scenes to showcase a character's vulnerability or some other quality, their intelligence, or to tell the audience something about the character, okay? Whether it's their backstory, whether it's personal history, whatever the case may be. This is where we sort of undermine the performances of our actors when we write like this. This is passive writing because it's about what's happening. It's not about what the character is doing. It's about what's happening around the character and how they react to it, and that is supposed to tell us about the character. That's why it's called passive, okay? Because it's not about the action, it's about the reaction or the circumstance, okay? What we're doing in a situation like this is we're asking the actor to basically sell our ideas about the character to the audience. We're asking them to embody a sense of emotional truth or tonal truth in order to make those ideas feel credible. And that is not acting, that's modeling. That's actually what models do in advertisements. It's literally the same thing. The reason why passive writing feels salesy because we are literally asking the actor to sell the story. We even refer to it as selling when we're directing these actors. So it's maddening to me that people don't see it, but there it is. And when you take it into the editing room and you cut it all together, it's going to feel like it's weightless. It's going to feel like it doesn't have a sense of truthfulness to it. It's going to feel a little bit canned. And people are going to have a hard time figuring out why. And it's because underneath the tonal truth and the emotional truth that the actor is looking to layer into the story, there's nothing else to support what's going on except the theme. Underneath that, we're just making observations on behalf of the audience and we're asking them to accept them. That's the problem, okay? And that's always where passive writing leads. This is exactly the reason why so many biographical pictures are boring to watch. The really great ones are about what someone did. Lincoln, you know, is about President Lincoln passing the 13th Amendment. It's about all the work that went into it, and it moves, man. You can, you know, The Imitation Game is about the work of breaking the Enigma code. Here's a bunch of watch parts, you know, Alan Turing, right? While the army tries to maintain whatever image they're trying to maintain, and while the Nazis try and win the war. Actions in conflict. That's exactly how it works. Whereas all those, you know, other biographical pictures, which we're not going to sit here and drag on my freaking blog feel like you're watching an advertisement for the character they're about. Don't they? And that's why. It's a structural issue. The tonal problem is non-existent. You know, the actors are doing a fantastic job, but they're selling the story. An actor performs an action. It's actually why we call them actors. I think we're done here. Thank you for watching the 8-Sided Blogs. If you like what you're getting from these blogs, please click the thumbs up. Please click the subscribe button to make sure you get your notifications, and click the little bell for the same reason, so that you see when additional episodes come online. And I will see you next week. Have a great week.